Hello everyone, welcome to my channel and welcome to today's tutorial. So on today's tutorial, we'll be learning how to make this beautiful bubu dress I'm putting on right now. If this is something you would like to learn, please do well to watch this video to the end and also subscribe and drop a comment in the comment section. Thank you. So I'm going to be using 3 yards of African prints fabric and also 1 yard of crepe. So let's get started. I've gone ahead to mark out my starting line, and the next thing to do now is to measure a neck width of 3 inches and a neck depth of 1 inch for the back pattern. I'll be using this pattern to draft for both the back and the front. So let's just connect our back neckline. So after connecting our back neckline, I'll go ahead to measure out my shoulder measurement divided by 2. My shoulder measurement is 15 inches divided by 2 will give us 7.5. So since it's a cut together sleeve, I'm going to be marking 10 inches for the length of our sleeve. The actual length of our sleeve is 12 inches, but since there is a band at the hem of the sleeve, I'm going to be subtracting 2 inches from that 12 inches to give us 10 inches. And I'm also going to be adding half inch for sewing allowance. So on that point, I'll come down by 1.5 inches for our shoulder slope. So I'm going to be connecting our shoulder slope to our neck width just like this. So after connecting our shoulder slope, the next thing to do now is to determine the length of our sleeve, the wideness of our sleeve. So I'm using 10 inches for the wideness and I added 1 inch for sewing allowance. So at this point will be our chest line. So on that point, I'm going to be taking the biggest part of our body. The biggest part of my body is my hip, so I'm going to be using my hip divided by 4 plus 4 inch for ease and also 1 inch for sewing allowance. So the next thing to do now is to mark out the length of our dress. The length of the dress is 36 inches, but I'm going to be adding 3 inches band to it. So I'm going to be minusing 3 inches from 36 inches to give us 33 inches. So I will go ahead to mark that out. So the next thing to do now is to mark out whatever we have on our chest line, on our hemline also, which is 15.25. So I'm just going to connect those points to give us a straight line, and I'll also connect to the sleeve. So after connecting the lines, I'll just go ahead to blend our armhole into the body of the dress to avoid sharp edges, and I'll also connect the hem of the sleeve, and also I'm going to connect the hem of the dress as shown. So this will be all for our pattern. I'll go ahead to cut out. So after cutting out, while transferring our pattern to our fabric, I went ahead to add half an inch allowance to our neckline and our shoulder slope. So now I'll go ahead to take out one piece of our fabric to cut out the front neckline. So for our front neckline, I'll go ahead to mark out 9 inches in the form of a V for our front neck depth. So I'll just go ahead to connect it to our 3 inches neck width as shown. So after connecting to our 3 inches neck width, I'll go ahead to cut it out. So after cutting it out, this is what we have. So for the design in front of our dress, I've gone ahead to mark out our starting line, and also I've marked out the length of the design, which is 19 inches. So on the starting line, I'm going to mark out my shoulder measurement divided by 2, which is 7.5 inches, and I'll go in by 2 inches. Then on the hemline, I'm going to go up by 5 inches. And on that point, I'll go in also by 5 inches. Then I'm going to connect that point to the hem of the pattern in a V, in the shape of a V. And also I will be connecting that point to the 2 inches that came in initially on the starting line. So for now, I'll be leaving the neckline of the pattern like this, so I'll just go ahead and cut it out. So after cutting out, this is what we have, and I'll go ahead to transfer to our fabric. So I've gone ahead to fold my fabric into two, and also I've gone ahead to place the straight part of my pattern on the folded edge of my fabric. So I'll go ahead to cut this out, adding half inch allowance all through. So after cutting our design on our fabric, this is what we have. So I'll go ahead now to cut out the neckline of the design. So I've gone ahead to fold my design into two, and I'll place the center front of my main fabric on the center front of the design so that we can trace out the neckline just as shown. So I'll go ahead now to trace out the neckline. So after tracing out the neckline, this is what we have, and this is how it's going to be in front of our dress. So the next thing to do now is to add estate to our design to give it structure. I've gone ahead to add estate on my design on the front, and I've also gone ahead to fold in the half inch allowance I gave earlier. I added earlier while cutting the pattern on the fabric. So the next thing to do now, I'm going to use this, as this will also serve as the facing for the front. So I'm going to use this to turn the neckline of the front. So I'm going to place right side facing the wrong side of the fabric, just like this. Then I'll go ahead to run a stitch on it following the shape of the neckline. So for the back pattern, I've also gone ahead to cut out facing for the back. I'm not going to be adding interface on the back pattern, so I'm just going to align the facing and the fabric together like this, and I'll also run a stitch on it just like this. So after joining the interface to the main fabric, this is what we have for the back, and I've also gone ahead to make notches around the neckline as shown. And for the front also, I've also gone ahead to sew around the neckline just as shown, and I've also made a notch on the V part of the dress. So the next thing to do now, I'm going to flip the facing like this. I'm going to flip the facing over to the front just like this. So now after flipping the facing to the right side of the fabric, I'll go ahead now and sew on this edge just like this. Sew around the edges just like this, and I'll do the same for the back also. I'm going to push the allowances to the side of the facing, and I'm going to make a top stitch around the neckline. So this is what I have after making a top stitch around the edges just like this. I've also done the same for the back. I've gone ahead to make a top stitch around the neckline. So the next thing to do now is to join the shoulder of our dress. We're going to be placing our dress right side facing the shoulder just like this, and I'm going to be joining the shoulders. After joining the shoulder of our dress, this is what we have. Our dress is gradually coming together. So the next thing to do now, I've gone ahead to cut out the band for the hemline of our sleeve. The band for the hemline of our sleeve, I've gone ahead to cut it out, and it's 2.5 inches on fold. 2.5 inches on fold, 2 inches for the band, then half an inch for joining allowance. So for the length of the band, you are going to measure around your sleeve to know the length you are going to cut out. So the next thing to do now is to join our band to our sleeve just like this as shown. So I'm going to run a stitch around it from start to end just like this, and I'll also do the same for the other side. So after joining the band to the hem of our sleeve, this is what we have, and I've also went ahead to make top stitch on the sleeves as you can see. So the next thing to do now is to fix the band at the hem of our dress, and I've also went ahead to cut out a fabric that will be enough to go around the hem of our dress, and the width of the fabric is 7 inches, which is 3.5 inches on fold, 3 inches for the band, and half an inch for sewing allowance. So I'll go ahead now to add our band to the hem of our dress just like this. I'm going to fold the band into two just like this, and I'll place it on the hem of our dress just like this and run a stitch across. I'll do the same for the other side of the dress also. So I've gone ahead to add the band to the hem of the dress for both the back and the front. So the next thing to do now is to close the sides. So let's take the measurements for the pockets of the dress. So from the tip of the dress of the neckline like this, I'm going to be marking 19 inches. I'm going to be marking 19 inches downwards just like this. Then For the opening of my pocket, I want it to be 7 inches. So I'll go ahead to mark out 7 inches. So while sewing, I'm going to sew all the way down here and stop here. Then I'll skip this 7 inches, then continue to sew downwards just like this. I will do the same for the other side also. So after joining the sides of our dress, this is what we have. And remember, I left the 7 inches opening for our pocket. So let's cut out our pocket and attach it to our dress. So let's go ahead to draft out our pattern. So I've gone ahead to cut a paper of 10 inches by length and also 10 inches by the width. So on one side of the paper, I'm going to go down by the opening of my pocket, which is 7 inches, and I'm going to add 1 inch for stitching allowance for the up and the down part of the sleeve of the pocket. Sorry. So the next thing to do now, on this point, I'll go in by 1 inch, and also at the top, I'll go in by 1 inch, and I'll connect these lines together. So after connecting the lines together, I'll go ahead and square here also. So the next thing to do now is to curve our sleeve, our pockets, just like this. So I'm just going to use my free hand to do this. So this is what we have after I've used my free hand to draw the pattern. So this is how our pocket is going to look like when we put our hand inside. So let's go ahead now and cut this out. So I'll go ahead now and cut this on my fabric. So I've gone ahead now to fold my fabric into 4 because we'll be needing 2 pieces each for each pocket. So that will make it 4 pieces altogether. And remember, I've already added 1 inch allowance on the paper, half an inch for the join for the all around the pocket. So let's get started. So after cutting out our pocket, this is what we have. Remember this 1 inch allowance we added earlier is for joining the pockets to our dress. This 1 inch allowance is for joining the pockets to our dress. So I'm just going to make a notch. I'm just going to make a notch on the 1 inch allowance so I will know where to stop sewing from. So moving over to the joining of the pockets, I'm going to turn, I've already turned my dress to the wrong side. So now I'm just going to pick one of the pocket like this. Pick one of the pocket like this, making sure right side facing the right side. And I'll pick one side of the allowance, one side of the opening, just like this. And I'm going to sew along the pocket like this. So let's go ahead to pin this. So after pinning one pocket to one side of the dress, I'm going to pick the other pocket, making sure right side facing right side, and I'm going to align it to match with the pocket just like this, the other pocket just like this. And I'll also join it to the other side of the fabric like this. So let's go ahead to pin it. So I'll go over to the sewing machine now and run a stitch on both sides of the pocket. So I've gone ahead to attach my pockets to my fabric just like this. So the next thing to do now, I'm going to be closing my pocket. So I will just go ahead to push the allowance facing one side like this. Then I'm going to continue sewing from where I stopped closing the dress. I'm going to continue sewing from here all the way down. I'm going to sew it round and stop here. So I will do the same for the other side of the pocket as well. So after joining the pockets, this is what we have. As you can see, it's looking nice and neat already. So we have come to the end of our tutorial. Thank you for watching. Please do well to subscribe and also drop a comment in the comment section.